and just situated at the bottom of the steps a wonderful little smokehouse, a local shop selling local fish that have been smoked, that is herrings that have been turned into kippers, haddock and cod that have been smoked. And so we leave Whitby and move on down to Robin Hood's Bay, only a few miles further down, but a delightful little cove and village perched in a hanging valley that comes down to the cliffs and the sea there. And at the bottom, a lovely little pub looking over the sea where you can get a good meal. And what better than a lovely pint of English bitter? I shall miss this when abroad, as I do. I don't like lager much, but do like a good real ale. Well, it's time to drive on now. We'll move on down to Scarborough, a town famous for its song, of course, of Scarborough. If you're interested in architecture, it's a wonderful place to go and look at the old Victorian buildings such as this. Now we move on down the coast to get nearer our final destination of Bridlington. We're going to go to Flamborough Head, and here North Landing, shown as an X on this map. North Landing is a very pretty little site where the cobbles are drawn up the slope away from the tides, famous for its smuggling in the past, and in more recent years, dare I say it, where foreign immigrants have been brought in illegally and helped the fishermen's earnings a little. About £1,000 a head was offered, I think, about 12 or 15 years ago, which to a fisherman trying to make a hard living at the fish stocks going down was certainly a temptation. Later of old filming, we will actually enter several of the caves with my cobble and come in and out of them at high water, so you could see it was quite possible for reasonable sized boats to hide away until night time covered their activities. And now we visit Flamborough. This is Flamborough Lighthouse, and that famous light which shines and can be seen for 30 to 40 miles all the way down the coast to Withensea and down to Spurn on a clear evening, stopping ships from coming in and being smashed on the rocks here. One of the nicest views of Bridlington is from Sowerby, which is just north of Bridlington. From here we can look all the way down the coast, or we can turn to our left looking east and look out towards Flamborough Head. Well, we're now at Bridlington Harbour, and here's a view of the famous fish house. Whichever view you see of Bridlington Harbour, that block and that slightly curved building always reminds you of where you are. We've seen fishing from the lower X there at Hornsea. We're now going to be using those top 3 X's and leaving from Bridlington and working our way around Flamborough Head and North Landing. To reach Flamborough Head by we design everything for ease and use and safety, so you can see here how easily the boat comes off, the trailer is then pulled away, and the trailer has additional wheels at the front so it can just be rolled along the sand and pulled up, ready to be pulled up by the car. In the same way, when I return, I can pull and winch the boat up onto the trailer with a series of rollers keeping the boat level. In those days you didn't have to go very far off the cliffs to catch fish, maybe 100-200 metres, and sometimes even less, because it shelved very quickly, and the rough gullies and areas of wrecks from ships from hundreds of years past provided lots of shelter for the fish. June-July is also a time when all the sand eels and smelts come around the area, and the cod are feeding on those, which is why we're using these things called rippers or perks. That length of chrome tubing filled with lead I told you about, with an artificial squid at the end called a muppet. and we had those squid up the line as well, so we'd have 4 or 5 feathers or squid to catch smaller fish such as mackerel or coalfish, and the cod would take those as well. I have a gaff on me because obviously the fish can fall off the hooks or break the line, and we would just gaff those fish, pull them in quickly, dispatch them as quickly as possible, and then get straight down for more fish. The camera I was using at this time was fairly new for its day. It was called a Umig Nautica, and I was able to use it underwater, and in fact did so quite successfully when snorkeling abroad. In this case you see a small 3-pound codling being brought up. Here we are going through that very cave at high water. You can see now there's about 5 or 6 foot of water there. If you can just see the echo sounder in a moment, that will show that depth of water. And it's rather fun to go in and around there at a steady speed and then come out at the other side. If there's a slight swell running, it's even more exciting, although you're quite safe if you know what you're doing with the boat. As you come out through the cave and you go up and down these larger waves with the close walls of the cliff each side, it's rather exciting. And here again you can see us coming out of the cave, and what a beautiful thing to do, and what wonderful memories I have. That's the same place we just went through with the boat, and there's the boat in the distance. We're just having a little troll around, catching a few mackerel again, and then coming in to pick up the crew. This is one of my favourite shots of the boat. It shows those beautiful Viking graceful lines. It still is my favourite boat of all the boats I've had, and I've had 4 cruisers, the yacht and this one, and several. On one particular and very memorable trip, we had a German come to visit us who came out fishing, and he decided he'd like to use ordinary garden worms there out at sea. Now that isn't a very good idea normally, because garden worms don't like salt water. They instantly die, or almost instantly, and just start to dissolve and disintegrate, unlike sea lugworm or ragworm. But we thought we'd give it a go, and were amazed that particular day that we happened to hit on a shoal of very large plaice that were feeding, and they loved these garden worms, and we were pulling plaice out to almost 7 pound. Very large fish indeed, and I've never done it since again. There, but when you see the young lady putting them into a basket in a moment, you'll see just how big they are. And here we are on one of those exceptionally oily, calm days out at sea where you'd think you were on the local duck pond. The young man here on the right-hand side is Paul Ripley. This is the only film of him. He was very camera shy, and his parents only had 1 photograph of him to the age of 15. After his death, rescuing the young lady from drowning in the sea, they used this film to get shots of him, and it had to be sent especially to America at that time just to get these shots done. Lovely lad, and he wasn't at all camera shy with me when working out fishing here at sea. The extraordinary thing is that when his body was finally washed up, it should have been washed up much further south into the River Humber, but in fact turned up at the very slipway at Hornsea that we used to go fishing so often 2 or 3 days in the season and catch enough for my use, and anything above that was sold to pay for the trips out or the fuel, or for a few pints down the pub. Nothing was wasted. The very smallest fish were thrown back, but if a fish was large enough, but not quite big enough for a full fillet, it would be turned into fish cakes. My God, I used to get seasick at times, but I always went back. It was such an incredible thing to do, so full of past history, and you could imagine all the old sailing ships underneath you and the bones. For my final part of this film, I rigged up my pebble cobble with an old traditional lug sail, and we decided to sail the boat from Hornsea all the way down to Bridlington and back. I've had several dogs in my lifetime. This was my first one, Ben, who was a border collie. He's quite a character, and as you can see, we found a life jacket that's fitted him ideally. On the way, I let a set of mackerel feathers dangle over the side of the boat, and we pulled in this string of them all in one go. Eventually we arrived at Bridlington, had a quick break, bought an ice cream from the shop up the way, and then set back off on our way. And finally, after our mishap with the engine, we just sailed back quietly with the wind gently behind us and the sun setting.